Welcome. We're so glad you guys are here at Churchill County Museum for our spring lecture series. This season, we're excited to share a lineup of talks celebrating the rich history, culture, and stories of our region. Thank you for being a part of this experience and helping keep these stories alive. Tonight, we're pleased to welcome Christina as part of the Churchill County Spring Lecture Series. Christina was born in Hollywood, California, and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from the UCLA in Theater Arts, where she studied not only acting, but also the behind-the-scenes crafts and scene construction, props, makeup, and costume design. After graduating, she went on to work in the entertainment industry and made her way to Reno in 1975. There she worked backstage at Harrah's and Cabaret as a stage technician, gaining a rare close-up perspective on performers and the inner workings of live entertainment. After 50 years of calling Nevada home, Christina now proudly considers herself a native Nevadan. We're delighted to have her with us this evening and to hear her share her experiences and insights. Please join me in welcoming Christina.
Thank you very, very much. Good evening. Glad to see all of you here tonight. Before I start my talk, you might wonder what you were listening to. Those are all people that I have worked. Yeah, working in the Cabaret for 16 years, I have helped over 75 to 100 bands throughout, as well as reviews, dance reviews. You may wonder why I'm dressed all in black on a beautiful spring day, and that's because this was our uniform. And it is not denim, these are dress pants, this is a dress shirt, and that was the requirement. At Harrah's, everything was top line, and so that is why I am appearing in all black on a gorgeous day. So I want to thank all of you. It's a $10 million room. Now, Bill Harrah made gambling safe and attractive for the middle class. He started with a small bingo game on the Santa Monica Pier. In 1937, he moved to Reno. Now, Bill Harrah was a true visionary. In the 1950s, he lobbied for a stronger gaming control commission. In the 1960s, he invited Stanford Business School to evaluate and make suggestions on how to improve his operations. And some of those things have been incorporated into every gaming machine that has been invented since. That's how wonderful and far ahead he was. Anyone who worked with Mr. Harrah knew he demanded the best of everything. He demanded that the club be spotless. He demanded that the back of the house corridors be spotless. He once tried to fire an auto mechanic for having grease on his coveralls. Now, he died unexpectedly in June of 1978. But before his death, he authorized a major capital expense renovating space to expand his casino. A part of those plans were a new $10 million cabaret. $10 million. According to Google yesterday, that is worth $50,120,398.77 today. When the Cabaret opened in 1980, it was spectacular. Every piece of equipment was the latest and the greatest. Even the room was acoustically tuned for sound. And the control booths, they were luxurious. Due to being renovated space, though, it only sat 260 guests. The Cabaret opened with Frederick Apcar's Heats On. Now, Frederick Apgar was a very famous French producer of lavish Las Vegas revues. Every entertainer who played that room loved it. B.B. King, Blues Boy, that's what it stood for. Now, B.B. King, he was a real gentleman. He was always polite and friendly, and he played 2 shows a night. His band would open with instrumentals, but once the curtain did go up, his bodyguard, Fogg, would go to the star dressing room and escort B.B. down to the cabaret. When he was in the wings, Edgar, his saxophonist, would introduce him. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. B.B. King. I can't hear you, Reno. Mr. B.B. King. B.B. would stroll on stage playing Lucille. He would join the band. He walked from each musician, would kind of nod and let them take a lead for a few moments. He was testing to find out who was playing hot that night. There was no set list. Not one show was the same. Every show, every night was different. Now, towards the end of his cabaret contract, B.B. spoke to me quite earnestly. Mama. He called me Mama, which I always took as a compliment. Mama, I'm getting to be an elderly gentleman, and 2 shows a night is hard. Would you ask if I could play only 1 show a night in the big room across the street? Well, whenever an entertainer asked me a question like that, I would be certain to communicate with the entertainment manager. Well, the entertainment manager said no. And B.B. never re-signed his contract. However, within a year, B.B.'s The Thrill Is Gone became a #1 hit nationally. B.B. then toured around the world, playing 1 show a night to crowds. Once, during his late show, a man walked up to the stage, and there was something in his hand. He threw it at B.B. B.B., who was upstage playing, stopped and stared while his band played on. Finally, B.B. walked over to see what was on the stage. He bent down, picked up a record album, signed it, and gave it back to the man, who was obviously a fan. Later, while we were striking band equipment, B.B. had not left the stage as he usually did with Fogg. He was sitting on a stool, center stage, and as I walked by, he started talking to me. Mama, tonight I thought I was a dead man. After the band equipment was locked away, B.B. left with Fogg. B.B. always said, Mama, this is the best showroom in the world, and I believed him. Phyllis Diller. I was kind of reluctant to meet Phyllis Diller because I always admired her. So many well-known entertainers can be real jerks when you finally are introduced or work with them. Not so Phyllis. She was delightful, and she enjoyed her gigs at Harrah's. She became a crew favorite. Now, Phyllis was famous for starting a stand-up career at the advanced old age of 37. She had a line for that. I became a stand-up comic because I had a sit-down husband. Now, Phyllis's humor was funny. She did not depend on foul language or scatological references. Rather than a manager or a bodyguard, Phyllis always traveled with one of her children or grandchildren as her protector. She said once, "On the way to the delivery room, I almost changed my mind about having a baby." It wouldn't have been so hard if I had realized that having a baby was the only way to become a grandmother. Does anyone remember Woolworths in downtown Reno? Phyllis loved putting on a disguise wig and walking down to enjoy breakfast or lunch at their counter. She also shopped there quite a bit and brought back treasures to show us. One Woolworth's hat was her favorite. I saw her being interviewed on a news program shot at her Bel Air home. Part of the interview was in her closet. She was wearing that hat. She removed it to try on different wigs for the reporter. Now, Phyllis was that confident a person that she would expose her sparse but real hair on national TV. Phyllis always said, "A woman should have the hair she always wanted." Not many people knew that Phyllis was an excellent musician. She played piano and saxophone sax. She also sang. One song was a parody of all her plastic surgery. She shared a plastic surgeon with Michael Jackson, and I believe her surgery count was over 30. The song had a line that her breasts had been lifted so many times, they used to be her kneecaps. Phyllis said, "When I die, God won't know me. No two parts of my body are the same age." Jay Leno. Now, comedians only work in cabarets on their way up or on their way down. Jay Leno began playing Harrah's Cabaret in 1984. Now, all shows at Harrah's have a 5-minute countdown to opening the curtain. In the light booth, I had a microphone to make time calls to the dressing rooms. 5 minutes, 5 minutes to showtime. The technician starting the show on stage also counted down out loud. For some reason, Jay got a big kick out of that and always said during his act, every night they send up the space shuttle. Now, we also had reviews at the same time, so there were cue sheets hanging on pegs backstage with pens. So Jay began leaving us notes, such as, "Buy Jay expensive gifts." Jay would like a cheeseburger. Jay wants a beer. And sometimes a small cartoon of his face. I wished I'd saved some of those. Before the show, Jay would sometimes go out to the cabaret bar and talk with guests who were waiting to get in. If he didn't arrive backstage during countdown, I always called the maitre d' to find out if he was entering through the audience so the curtain could open on time, spotlight pick him up, walking to the stage. After his final performance in the cabaret, on his way across the street to the headliner room, I said to him, "Good luck. See you on the way down. Jay laughed, and I laughed too. Well, that didn't happen. Paul Revere and the Raiders. In 1966, Dick Clark called Paul the madman of rock and roll, a title which he embraced. As he got older, Paul called himself the last madman of rock and roll. Now, Paul was actually a blood relative to Paul Revere. His real name was Paul Revere Dick. And he could be a dick. He was always concerned there was enough light on him. With 375 lamps hung on stage, I never saw it as a problem. One night after the show, he waited on stage for me to come down from the booth. He pointed to one small lamp, which was overhead downstage. He did not see it come on during his show. I explained that it was a special for the review, and I was not supposed to use it because the color filter burned out way too quickly. He didn't care. So, for a week, I had to haul my ladder out to change gels between shows so he could see that one small lamp light up. Now, his show was always upbeat and loud. Their costumes were Revolutionary War takeoffs. And at the end of the show, Paul would toss a few tri-colored hats into the audience as souvenirs. Once there was a woman who came to every show until she got the seat she wanted. And reaching for a hat, fell over the banquette. Of course, she sued Harrah's for whiplash and being negligent by having low lights in the room. I had to meet with the lawyers and demonstrate lighting levels. Of course, she did not win. Now, Paul worked many New Years at the Cabaret, and one year he brought these huge balloons which the audience bounced around. We discovered that if we hit them with the spotlights, they just glowed magically. Now that show was exciting, and actually much more exciting than the one across the street for VIPs in the headliner room. Bill Medley. According to Wikipedia, "You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling" is the most played song in the history of American radio. Bill was another favorite with the crew. His shows were always packed with female fans. It was a joy lighting his show. He not only sang the blues, but also rock and roll. When Bill sang, "You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling," the front row ladies swooned. During the last lines of the song, he loved getting down on one knee and singing to one individual. Bring back that lovin' feeling. Whoa, that lovin' feeling. Bring back that lovin' feeling, 'cause it's gone, gone, gone. He would never kneel in the same place twice, and I had focused an overhead purple special just for those lines. After asking him many times to end up in the overhead dramatically, one show I had an idea, and I began to slowly fade out the lights. First the front lights, then the back lights, finally the side lights, and then I had the spotlight slowly fading out until the only light on stage was my purple overhead. He looked up to the light booth, gave me a big smile, and from that time on, when he worked the front row, he would edge over to the overhead and pose. We often discussed why the ladies swooned. He said it was his voice, while I insisted it was my purple overhead. When they closed the Cabaret and remodeled the headliner room into Sammy's room, he was an act that continued to perform. I was so embarrassed in a big way the first time I ran him at Sammy's room. My light board in the Cabaret was maybe 3.5 feet wide. The new board in Sammy's room was over 6 feet long. When I was slowly taking the lights out, I lost my balance, and my hand hit a control button that lit every light on stage. Bill got such a wide grin on his face when he looked up at me in the booth. We hugged after the show. The new Mamas and the Papas. Now, the new Mamas and Papas began performing in 1982 after John Phillips was released from jail on drug charges. John Phillips and Denny Doherty were the only original members. Cass Elliott's part was now sung by Spanky McFarland, and Michelle Phillips was replaced by John's daughter, Mackenzie Phillips. Mackenzie Phillips, who repeatedly said during every show, "Michelle is not my mother." While the music was enjoyable and upbeat, these were not happy people. Now, the real star of the show was Scott McKenzie, whose one-hit song, "If you're going to San Francisco, be sure to wear some flowers in your hair." So Scott was hidden backstage with his own microphone, and he covered, that means he actually performed, all of John's vocals and guitar solos. Now, Scott was raised in Virginia near John Phillips, and they had been friends since childhood. Once, every show, Scott was invited on stage as if he were just visiting, and he would sing his only hit. Unfortunately, drug rehabilitation did not completely cure John or Mackenzie Phillips, and the shows were sometimes a bit ragged. Sammy Davis Jr. He broke entertainment race barriers. Sammy appeared many, many times at Harrah's Reno. At Harrah's, he felt safe, at home, and he had friends throughout casino staff, top to bottom. Unpacking or packing up his truckload of equipment was difficult. He always brought an entire household, cooking tools, decor items, instruments. One time I thought I could lift a small black box, and I quickly found out why there were 4 wheels on the bottom. It was his collection of vinyl LPs, and it weighed a ton. It was always exciting to have Mr. D at Harrah's parties down in the steakhouse, featuring chafing dishes full of lobster and steaks. Of course, the party never started until after the last show, which was later than 1 a.m. Does anyone in this room remember the Granada Theater on First Street in Reno? Okay. If he had recently acted in a film, he would arrange for a viewing, and the party moved to the Granada Theater at 1 a.m. Harrah's brought a full bar and buffet for everyone to enjoy. Sometimes the films were not yet released, and we got a special preview. Now, one freezing winter night, he had an audience that loved him, and he kept the show going on and on and on. Problem was, his equipment needed to be on the Oakland docks by 6 a.m. the next morning. It was being shipped to Japan, and Donner Pass was about to close. Mm-hmm. We were all sitting in the light booth waiting for him to end. His lighting director was getting more and more nervous as Sammy sang and danced on. The show was going overtime, almost an hour, and his lighting director said to me, "Hey, I'll give you $50 if you'll go down to the room and yell out, 'Dance, boy, dance!'" Ooh. Once, someone yelled that at Sammy, who immediately threw his mic down, walked off stage, ended the show. Well, let me tell you, I didn't do it. There is a Hollywood story that Sammy went golfing with Jack Benny, and Jack asked him what his handicap was. Sammy is quoted as saying, "Handicap? I'm a one-eyed Negro who's Jewish." What audiences did not understand or see was that towards the end, Sammy had bad hips. Whenever you saw him backstage, he was using not one, but 2 canes and could barely walk. However, once the curtain went up, the spotlight hit him, it was showtime. Debbie Reynolds. When Debbie appeared in the headliner room, I often visited her personal assistant and the headliner room seamstress. The assistant helped Debbie dress and put on her makeup, and they were longtime friends because the assistant had been a dancer in Hollywood and appeared in some of Debbie's movies. Debbie would playfully remind her that she was always in the chorus, not the star, and couldn't wear makeup on her neck so as not to dirty costumes. Now, Debbie's children, Carrie and Todd Fisher, usually came at least once to watch their mother perform. Debbie's life was never easy. Her infamous divorce from Eddie Fisher, and then having to bail out her supposedly wealthy husband's debts, did not dim her joie de vivre. The third marriage had challenges as well. Debbie used to talk about trying to bond with neighbors. This is a Hollywood star over gardening. One line was, "How are your snap peas doing?" Being in the wings off stage at the end of her performance, it was fun. Many members of the audience would walk up to the stage and hand her bouquets of fabulous flowers, dozens and dozens of roses. Debbie always gracefully accepted blue kisses. However, when the curtain came down, she would rush off stage, shove the flowers into the first stage hand she saw, saying, "Get these fucking things away from me." It seems Debbie was allergic to roses. Boots Randolph. Boots was a really fun guy. He was best known for Yakety Sax, which became the theme music for the Benny Hill Show. Now, Boots started out as a session musician, and he had recorded with all the famous Nashville performers. He always asked to be booked at Harrah's during the winter because he and his band loved skiing the Sierra. He had to be back in New Orleans before Super Bowl because he traditionally entertained at the breakfast prior to the game. I was on the pack-in call for his first appearance at Harrah's. Because we had 4 or 5 shows each night, the drum kits had to be set up on a movable riser. He was watching me secure the riser into the floor to keep it from moving. Boots came over to me, looked down and asked if I could please move the riser back 12 to 18 inches so he had more room downstage. I very nicely explained that we did not drill new holes into the stage and that there was another set of holes just upstage, and I moved the riser and set it there. It was only about a 4 to maybe 5-inch difference. I looked up, and Boots, he watched me do it. He looked at it and he said, "Well, that's about a foot." I looked up at him and said, "If I knew you better, I would say something smutty." And we both laughed. The Kingston Trio. It was founded by Bob Shane, making folk songs popular in the 60s. And actually 4 of their albums were in Billboard's top 10. Now they started out in San Francisco, and after the folk scene disintegrated, continued touring colleges and cabarets the world over. Throughout the years, they appeared in our cabaret. The musicians would change often, but Bob Shane remained the star. Now the light booth would turn into a hootenanny as everyone would sing along to all of the well-known songs. Now Bob was usually sharp for the 9:30 p.m. show, but imbibed heavily from the time the curtain closed until their next show at 12:30 a.m. At Harrah's, opening the curtain on time was a cardinal rule. Opening the curtain late, a cardinal sin. One night when I was starting the late show, there was no Bob. We called the dressing room. No Bob. We called the casino bars. No Bob. We called the 21 tables. No Bob. After 5 minutes, the cabaret manager told me, "Start the show." So I did. I left the stage, went downstairs, talked to some of the review show kids, and I went out a basement door. Now that's where I found Bob. He was beating on the door because he could not remember the door code. Our door codes were extremely complex, difficult, and challenging. 5, 4, 3. Sons of the Pioneer. Boy, when this group was booked, I was 5 years old again, sitting on our couch in LA, watching the Roy Rogers show on Channel 5. They started performing in 1934, and in the 1980s, were stars in Branson, Missouri, where they had 2 shows a day, one at 10 a.m. and another at noon, both featuring all-you-can-eat buffets. It was a nice retirement. The lighting director was one of their daughters, and we had a good time in the booth during the shows. She would recount tales of tech crews in Missouri and how wonderful it was to be done with your work by 1:30 p.m. each day. Now the stage, we decorated it with a few hay barrels, and at the end of the show, you could find one or more of the group sitting on a bale, breathing hard. altitude, and age. They had such wonderful songs. Cool Water, Tumblin' Tumbleweeds, Ghost Riders in the Sky, all such wonderful classics. The Byrds. Now, when the Byrds came to the Cabaret, there was only one original member, and I have honestly forgotten who that was. The Byrds enjoyed so many hits: Turn, 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 Mr. Tambourine Man, Knock, Knock, Knocking on Heaven's Door, 8 Miles High. And during the pack-in, I noticed 2 really beat-up gray monitors, those are speakers, in their gear. At Harrah's, everything on stage had to look good. No dings, no scratches, no tears. So I asked my usual question: do you mind if I paint these? And Mr. Original Person said, no, go ahead. And so I painted them our traditional flat black. At the end of their first show, when I went down to the stage, Mr. Original Person was shocked. You painted them black. Yeah, I did. Mr. Original Person explained that those monitors started with the Byrds in a garage and had been used since 1964, and they were always called the gray boxes. Well, I said, they're now the black boxes. He laughed. Whew, I laughed. During their next appearance, Mr. Original Person told me they still referred to them as the gray boxes, and could I please touch up the black paint? So I guess I did change a little bit of rock and roll history. Eric Burden. He was such an enjoyable entertainer. He's best known for House of the Rising Sun. He would stay backstage while his band played Rising Sun as an instrumental to warm up the audience. Whenever I started the show backstage, Eric would lean over and sing very different words. Very suggestive and very funny in an obscene way. I think he enjoyed talking to me because we were both 5 feet 4 inches. It's 5 feet, 5 feet 4 inches tall. I don't know how tall I am. That's terrible. Could it be dementia? Anyway, all the guys on the crew were actually much taller. War. Now, they are an amazing group of musicians, and they've created a fusion of funk, rhythm and blues, soul, rock, psychedelia, reggae, and Latin, which led to many memorable hits. And they still come back and perform in the area during hot August nights. So Spill the Wine, Cisco Kid, Why Can't We Be Friends, Low Rider. The percussionist, Papa D, was incredible. He had an array of bongos, Congo drums, African drums. He is no longer on this earth, yet I still remember his performances. He was that good. When War appeared at Harrah's, the lead singer was the drummer. During pack-in, we pulled out our drum riser and started assembling his kit. He freaked out. The riser is only 16 inches tall, and we secure it with gate latches locked into holes on the stage. It didn't really move, but it wiggled enough to make him say he would not use it. We explained, with 4 and 5 shows per night, the drum kit had to move quickly on and off stage. We did not have time to reassemble it every show. A compromise was made when we provided a platform with wheels that was only 4 inches tall. However, it had to be locked down with multiple wedges on every side. Now the drummer was a big man. He was well over 6 feet tall, and he must have weighed 300 pounds plus. And I was really surprised that he would suffer from acrophobia, fear of heights, or in this case, fear of inches. Slim Whitman. Paul Revere used to make jokes about Slim Whitman and his late night ads on television. So it was surprising when Slim was booked into the Cabaret, and he drew some really big audiences. Now, he was in showbiz for 70 years, recording over 100 albums. However, most are available by calling a 1-800 number in the middle of the night. He was classified as a country singer, songwriter, and was known for his ability to yodel. And yodel he did. I can't demonstrate yodeling. Do I have a yodeler in the house? No, okay. The highlight of his show was when he would introduce his son, Byron. Slim and his band were always wearing black. Byron would come out in all white leather with yards and yards and yards of fringe. Byron's contribution to the show was prancing around the stage, interpretively dancing to the music. I'm not going to say anymore. Steppenwolf. John Kay was a truly interesting singer. He was best known for Magic Carpet Ride and Born to be Wild. He only returned to touring because there were too many bands traveling around claiming to be Steppenwolf. His show attracted some rowdy crowds who weren't afraid to make their wants known. Whenever a group would stand up demanding "Born to be Wild" in the middle of the show, John would stop, stare, or should I say glare, and say, "Sit down. This isn't Burger King. You can't have it your way." Now, some of the review dancers thought he was the sexiest man alive and would come up to the booth during his show to watch. During the last number of his show, he would pick up his microphone stand and pump it in the air for the entire song. Those things are heavy. Now, this picture is from 2007, and you can see he still has guns. Now, I found out that John was totally colorblind. His world was gray. When he went on the road, his wife would pack leather pants in red, black, gray, and white. His silk shirts were in the same colors. Only his shoes had to be marked as pairs. No matter what combination he chose, he went on stage looking good and sexy. Thank you. Elvin Bishop. Elvin Bishop is a great guitarist and songwriter who plays blues, country, rock and roll. Now, he loved coming to Reno because he lived in Novato, California, and the trip was a short one at the start of a tour, or a short trip home at the end of a tour. I preferred him at the start of a tour. He was a good old boy and loved wearing denim coveralls. He always stayed in a hotel that had rooms with kitchens because he loved to cook, and he was always inviting the crew and the show kids over for a meal. Personally, I never went. Loved his music, did not love his hygiene. He would start a 2-week tour clean, and then never take a shower until he was home again. He also had a habit of not wearing anything under those coveralls during the late show. Many a time I had to duck away from being hugged. The amazing Kreskin. He was truly amazing. His tricks and sleight of hand were mind-boggling. One of the hazing rituals for new stage techs was to introduce them to Kreskin, who clutched their hand with an iron grip and pumped it up and down for what seemed like ages. Once you experienced that, you stayed away from shaking hands with him again. The show was extremely easy. His contract stipulated that we open the curtains, bring up the lights, turn on the sound, play the announcement, and then leave for an hour. He posted $1 million reward if anyone can prove he was cheating. So we got a break in the middle of the night. His insurance policy required that there would be no one in the booth. Sometimes we would return to an empty cabaret, lights up, curtain open, no audience, no Kreskin. At the end of his run, the entertainment manager would hide his check. If Kreskin could not find it, he didn't get paid. Well, he always found it. Kreskin just passed away last year at the age of 89, and he was teaching classes for law enforcement groups focusing on psychological methods to jog lost memories or detect lies through body language and voice inflections. Just don't ever shake his hand. Billy Preston. Billy was known as the fifth Beatle. He was an American keyboardist, singer, songwriter, and he is the only musician to be given credit on Beatles recordings, Get Back and Don't Let Me Down. You can see him working with the Beatles in the TV documentaries Get Back and Let It Be. Now, after the Beatles broke up, Billy, he toured with George Harrison. He also toured with Rolling Stones and Eric Clapton. At Harrah's, Billy's shows were always upbeat. He loved our old B3 organ with the foot pedals, and boy, could he play it. He usually wore a red tuxedo jacket with black satin lapels that looked quite elegant. His smile, it was infectious. If anyone in the audience looked up to the booths during his song, Will It Go Round in Circles, they would see the board, spotlight, and sound operators going, because that's what he was doing on stage. Problem children. If an act was too difficult or obnoxious, they were never booked a second time. There were a few exceptions, but the ones who only came once were Commander Cody. When he was on stage at the piano, he was sensational. However, he was always so stoned and drunk that he could not find his way from the dressing rooms to the stage. We had to put duct tape arrows on the floor, the walls, and the doors. Ah, Peter Noon of Herman's Hermits. When I asked him about lighting cues, he looked up at the booth and said, "Oh, 2 spotlights. Yes, 2 spotlights on me in white." I asked about if the guitarist takes a solo or the keyboardist, to which he replied, "Oh, fuck the musicians. I'm the star. 2 spotlights on me, no blackouts. Well, it is true what is said about not upsetting the crew. I managed to put a pale yellow gel into the spotlight so he looked a bit jaundiced for him. B.J. Thomas, raindrops keep falling on my head. He took a whiz in the trash can backstage, even though he had just come from his dressing room. We had to call hazmat. Honey Bear Hickey. Now this is not Honey Bear, but she was a cowgirl. And it was one of the strangest acts we ever got after that they cut our budget. She was a rodeo queen, and some agent put her together with 5 musicians who were the Rainbow Ranch Girls. Being in Nevada, to me, that sounded like a Joe Conforti enterprise. Her finale was to twirl a rope and make it the loop bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, she managed, by mistake, to rope and pull down all the microphones, denting the microphones. And she would rope drinks off the front row of tables. Ah, Boxcar Willie. Look up smarmy in the dictionary, and you will see his picture. During the pack-in, he noticed that our sound tech was of Japanese descent. He also saw women moving equipment and setting the stage. He pulled the cabaret manager aside and said he didn't want no effing giants or effing bitches working his show. Oh, I think he used the C word, but anyway. Well, so you know who was exactly assigned to working all of his shows. Now, I did notice that his slide guitar player vigorously picked his nose during blackouts. So I programmed some dark blue lights to never go off. Those on stage wouldn't notice, but the audience got to observe some Olympic nose picking. Now, the following entertainers appeared more than once due to certain circumstances. Asleep at the Wheel. They're a country western band. We have fans, and they did fill the seats. The lead singer, Big Daddy, always brought a beer bottle on stage. Before the start of every show, we would take that bottle of beer and pour it into a plastic cup. No glass was allowed on stage. He hated us for following our rules. Their last performance was quite memorable. It was the 2 a.m. show. The maitre d's were off changing clothes to go home and was left with only one cocktail waitress in the room. Big Daddy called her over and requested a drink, which she went and got and handed up to him. It was a brandy snifter. He took one gulp. He looked up at the booths. He gave us what can only be called a big shitting grin and slammed that snifter onto the stage. And it broke into thousands of pieces. His contract was terminated the next day. Doug Kershaw, the Ragin' Cajun. What a piece of work. He had to play the cabaret weeks at a time to work off gambling debts. And we had to endure his moves. One night he came up from the dressing room and just hit the drummer on the head with a beer bottle and stomped off. Whew. To quote one of our texts, are those the eyes of a sane man? No. And now, Bill Cosby. I have lived long enough. Now the entire world knows what I have known for over 50 years. Bill Cosby, not a nice person. In 1969, after graduating UCLA, my first entertainment job was at a company called Cragen, Smothers, and Fritz, and we produced the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. The offices were in Beverly Hills. In the next block, there was another company named Cosby and Silver. Tommy Smothers and Bill Cosby had major disagreements over the years, and you know, Hollywood loves gossip, and even way back then, there were nasty rumors about Bill. The other administrative assistant and I, if we had to take someone from Smothers and Fritz over to Cosby and Silver, think about it, this is the 1970s, we would get the messenger service to take it, because we didn't want to go into that office. They were just too nasty. And at that time, that was $36 to send it just a block away. That's why. Ugh. Ugh. Anyway, remember New Coke? Does anybody remember? Okay. Coca-Cola signed Bill to be the face of New Coke, hoping for a public response equal to the Jell-O, real feel-good vibrations. Now, since Coke wanted the ads since Coca-Cola wanted the ads out as quickly as possible, and he was appearing right then at Harrah's headliner room, they arranged for a broadcast truck to film him in Reno. Well, the Cabaret had capability of accommodating ultra-high voltage equipment needed for professional television and film. There were two of us on the call to assist the outside technicians and cameramen. Now, the headliner room had a dressing room attendant who was loved by the crew and most entertainers. For years, George had managed the Harrah's auto collection gift shop. And Mr. Harrah actually trusted George to select presents for personal friends and family. George at this time was in his 80s, spry, but 80s. When George walked in with Bill, we noticed Bill had a towel wrapped around his neck, and he seemed in a bad mood. And George was just following along with extra towels. When Bill reached center stage, he spit. He spit on the stage. Dancers danced on that stage. Now, George He understood how fussy we were about keeping the stage clean. And George had to get down on his hands and knees to clean up Bill's spit. And Bill didn't even attempt to help George get up. Well, turns out I had to use some of my Cabaret lights for the shoot. So I can honestly say that I lit a national commercial for Coca-Cola. But the shoot was running overtime. Bill did not care. Now our review had magicians that made a red sports car disappear. Bill wanted to sit in the car. So we had to go down, open secure backstage areas, push the car onto stage for him to sit in. He wanted the cameraman to shoot the commercial with him in the car. Now the director from Los Angeles was not amused. It did not matter to Bill that we had a crew coming in to open and set the stage for the night. I was so happy when that shoot was over. Now, January 2024. While standing in line at Rayleigh's, I saw a gossip headline. Died nursing grudge. Tommy Smothers feud with Bill Cosby. I never read those gossip things, but I bought it. I knew Tommy Smothers. In reading the articles, I found out that at a Playboy Mansion party in 1972, Bill snuck up behind Tommy and threw a punch that decked him. And then Bill left quickly. Feuds started in the 60s. They were never resolved. Now, I'm certain Tommy must have enjoyed some schadenfreude watching Bill's sex abuse trials. I know I have. I cannot leave you with Bill. My final entertainment is another favorite and a sweet lady, Della Reese. I met Della when she performed at Harrah's during the early 90s. Her husband, Franklin, sat with me calling light cues. Frank was a writer and concert promoter. Now, Della was a joyful person. She was an ordained minister and had her own church in Southern California. One time, she chartered buses to bring her entire congregation to Harrah's. Now, let me tell you, that show was foot stomping and clapping. Amen. Hallelujah. Well, I loved it. Now, after that first booking, Frank and I began to chit-chat between cues. He talked about putting together a bigger show for Della that would have singers and dancers. He was looking for a venue where they could make final corrections and have an audience. He asked me to inquire if that was a possibility. So I asked the entertainment manager. He thought it was a great idea. When the next year's bookings came out, no Della. I went marching into his office and up to his desk and said, "Why?" He looked at me with a strange expression and said, "I forgot." Now, during 1994, what came out on television? Touched by an Angel. Harrah's could no longer afford Della Reese. After each show, Della would wait for me to escort Frank down from the light booth to backstage. Sometimes she would give me, a great big old bear hug. Now, on a good day, I am 5 feet 4 inches tall. Della was a tall woman in high heels. Talk about being in the bosom of Abraham. I was there. And that's all. So does anyone have any questions? No? No questions? I have failed? Yes.
Is this your new career that you've done this so wonderfully, this PowerPoint? Do you do this talk all over North?
Well, I have done it quite a few different places. I also have another speech that I hope to give here in the fall, which is about what happens backstage during reviews, which a lot of things go crazy. I mean, I have taken care of loose tigers, fires, things like that the audience never sees. And sometimes you think they should probably just run away because of things that were happening backstage. Yeah. Yes.
Well, let's go with that theme. What's your best story from backstage?
That's really difficult. That is really difficult because the shows, what goes on, there's all kinds of the magicians that we have worked with that we're not supposed to divulge, but literally I had loose tigers twice. And I was all by myself. People were on stage dancing, and I had to take care of getting the tigers confined. And luckily they did not bite me, which is really nice. Yes, you.
Yeah, so you've mentioned reviews a couple times. What does that mean?
It is classical reviews, which means there are ornate, involved dance numbers with all kinds of dancers, choreographed. And then there will be what are called specialty acts, which can be jugglers, so that they come out and they perform in front of what's called an act curtain. There's the main curtain, but there's an act curtain that they will perform in front of while things are being changed backstage. And it was kind of interesting because we had staircases, unbelievable staircases. They go up, they go down. And we have to figure out how to tear them apart and roll them off stage or whatever's happening, and then roll them back on and lock them down. One of my favorite things is we had a juggler who was young, and he had never worked a topless show before, and he had a hard time performing at a topless show. And he was usually off talking with one of the dancers, and he kept missing his bows. And the bows at the end of the show, people would walk up to the top of the stairs, get hit with a spotlight, they come down the stairs, taking their bow, bowing to the audience. And he finally, he came up the stairs, up to the top of the stairs. He took a nice bow, and he came and he took a nice bow like that, and then he stepped back, and he disappeared.
Oh.
The next day, we had to put up a fence so that he wouldn't fall off the back of the stage again. I mean, just things like that. Well, yeah, it was up about this high. Yeah, it was, trying to think of how many steps there were. Right now, those steps are in my attic as shelves. Because you don't ever want to waste something like that. Any other questions? Yes.
Have you thought about writing a book?
Yes, I have a friend who's pushing me to do that. And yes, I will be doing that because with my two entertainment speeches, it's practically written right now. And also I have a lot of things that I did down in Beverly Hills, working for entertainers and what have you, that was really quite special as well. Yes?
Well, after you did this behind the stage and cabaret and all that stuff, what kind of profession did you go into that could possibly top that? I know the answer.
She's my plant. It's kind of interesting because there was one day, there were two dancers and me. We all left showbiz that night because we were tired. You know, in Sammy's room, I had to carry a 14-foot ladder out every night into the audience and set up projectors and what have you. And it was interesting because the headliner crew was all guys, and there wasn't ever going to be an effing woman. Well, they wound up with two effing women when they closed the cabaret and they opened up Sammy's room. And I had one or two men who would help me, but I got tired of a 14-foot ladder. It's interesting. I can flip it over and I can walk it up and kind of get it to swing out and stay. But the physics are wrong for someone of my size to walk it back down. And so I just would leave it out there, and I figured if they want to get rid of it, they can leave it out there with the audience, or one of the guys can go get it. I just got very angry about it. And then I went to, at Harrah's, I went into, I managed the Keno game for, let's see, another 8 or 9 years. And then I managed the cashier cage and the credit, which was really, really interesting. Learned a lot. Lots of money. I know that one time we had a really big weekend, and when you pack the money up to go to the bank, you have to put it in envelopes that you can only put in $200,000 at a time. And one of the maintenance guys had to come into my main vault to fix some things, and then later during the day, somewhere else in the club, he said, "How much money was that on the floor?" And I said, "Well, it was $3 million. However, I would suggest that you think about it as cans of peas. because that's the only way that you can deal with this kind of stuff. Yeah. Then I went to work managing DMV for 10 years. And I retired out of the DMV in 2018. And I'm doing another speech for the Nevada Humane Society on July 25th about being in charge of the DMV. I foolishly thought that I had lost all of my funny stories. So yeah, I have always just tried. Let's see. I am not a person who has ever had a goal. No. I've always done something that was, oh, that's interesting. And just, that's it. That's what I've done. So. Which means I'm not a millionaire, but I've had a good time. Any other questions? Yes.
If you've spent so long at the DMV, I would highly suggest there's a stand-up comic by the name of Patton Oswalt.
Yes.
And he talks about what the poor people at the DMV have to put up with. And some of the people who are just, you're not sure what they're thinking when they walk into the Department of Motor Vehicles. So if you haven't checked him out, check him out.
I will. Yeah. At the DMV, it was very interesting. I found out that because we were an open carry state, I came back from lunch once and I found everybody, there's a guy with a gun, there's a guy with a gun. Okay, there's a guy with a gun. So I checked with the feds, Sparks, Reno, the state police, the highway patrol, and there was no way I could do anything about a guy with a gun on his hip. So I walked over and I said, hi, what is it you're wanting to do? Come with me. And I took him and I made sure his transaction was done and that he got the hell out. So there's someone who was slightly more senior than I was, who really did not like me from Las Vegas, who called me up and gave me holy hell. Did you do this? Did you just, take the guy? And yeah, I got him the hell out. Everybody was nervous. And he said, well, there's now online a blog for open carry that said if you want quick service at the DMV to go in with your gun. Did you do that? Yeah, I did that. And she got furious and just was screaming at me up one side down, which she had no right to do. But anyway, I have found it's best just to let people explode and wait till I get over it. And so I had to laugh because within the next 3 months, the director of the DMV put it out there that if someone comes in with a gun, just get them, see to it that their transaction gets taken care of and they get the hell out. So which really upset this woman even more, that they liked what I came up with. But it's like customer service, especially with entertainers, customer service with people that are gambling, customer service at the DMV. That's kind of been my whole life, is how to take care of issues, no matter what they are. So. Okay, Mel.